So let me start by introducing Mark, and I'll tell you a little bit about him. Welcome to the 10 Top Ways to Avoid Scams with Mark Federhoff, Program Manager for AARP ElderWatch. AARP ElderWatch is a statewide partnership between AARP and Colorado Attorney General's Office to educate older Coloradans about fraud and financial literacy. He has worked on education and outreach to older adults for over 15 years. Mark currently works with a crew of dedicated volunteers to address thousands of inquiries each month about fraud, scams, and financial exploitation as part of AARP's fraud helplines. I don't know about you, but I chase fraud stuff all the time in my email, text, etc. So I'm looking forward to listening to all of Mark's educational advice. And so, Mark, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Really appreciate it. And thanks for AARP Colorado for hosting today's webinar. I'm going to pull up my slides here real quick. Awesome. Cheryl, can you see that? Thumbs up. Perfect. Okay, so again, today we're going to talk about the top 10 ways to avoid fraud. I will tell you that I created this presentation a while back, maybe a year or two ago, but it's one of my favorite presentations to do because it's full of lots of practical information to kind of avoid fraud on a daily basis. And I know that if we were in a room, with the 300 people who registered for today's webinar, and I asked you all, who has a scam attempt or a fraud attempt today, you all would probably everyone would probably raise their hand because we're getting text messages, we're getting phone calls, we're getting emails, we're getting people at our door, all different types of frauds coming from all different directions. And so today, what I'm hoping to do is address a lot of kind of those concerns and give you some practical tips on ways of avoiding fraud. I will tell you that I think growing up, I was always a big fan of the David Letterman top 10 list. And I don't know if you guys remember the top 10 list from the old David Letterman Tonight Show or Late Show. But this is less funny, I promise you that, but it hopefully will be more valuable in terms of how we're thinking about fraud and how we're avoiding fraud on a daily basis. So just a little bit more about ElderWatch. We're a unique partnership that only really exists in Colorado between AARP and the Colorado Attorney General's Office. This partnership's been going on for 24 years. And really what we try to do is educate older Coloradans all over the state using presentations like this and educational materials and advertisements and different types of events, again, to educate folks about the different types of scams that are currently out there. And in addition to that, we also have a helpline, and I'll give you the number at the end of our helpline as well. But we take calls in our office, and we have awesome volunteers who help out with calls in the office in terms of helping people through different types of fraud situations. I'll tell you, just today, a couple of the calls that came in were about kind of shady business practices and also some issues with contractors, that type of a thing. And so we'll address some of that today as we're going through the slides. But if you're looking for in-person presentations, that type of a thing for folks in your community or other types of information in your community, you can always reach out to us, and I'll give you some contact information at the end as well as some information about other upcoming events that we have going on in the state as well. So I'm going to start with just talking about some of the most common scams that are reported. I'm not going to go into this in detail. A lot of the times when I do a presentation, I talk about these kind of in detail. But what I want to do today is kind of just talk about what we're hearing on the helpline, what we heard in 2024. I'll tell you, so far in 2025, we've only fielded about 450 calls. So I'm still using numbers from 2024, but I'll probably switch this with new trending scams when I see enough data from 2025 to be able to kind of let people know again about what's happening so far this year. I will say they're close to what we heard in 2024. So this remains relevant. I'll say just number one on this list, identity theft. You had over twice as many complaints about identity theft as the next most, as imposter business scams, which is the number two most common scams. And so identity theft is on the minds of lots of older Coloradans who are calling our helpline. And so I'll be talking about identity theft today. And again, preventative ways to protect your identity. Number two on this list, again, scammers pose as large businesses that we're familiar with. An example is Amazon, PayPal, shipping entities, large banks, again, tricky ways that they're trying to reach out to you. And again, we're going to talk about ways of avoiding some of these imposter business scams today. Tech support and computer virus scams. These scams have gotten way more aggressive than they ever have before. And again, today, when we're talking about scams, we'll be talking about tech support and computer virus scams as well, just in ways of avoiding them and again, understanding what's real and what's not, and how we shouldn't be letting anyone onto our computer remotely. Again, something really important to remember. Phishing scams, we see these in a lot of different ways, shapes, and forms. I'll say the most common type of phishing scam that we're seeing right now are with relation to text messages. And so I'm sure if we're in a room and I asked everyone who had received a text message about a toll in the last couple of months, you all would agree that you've gotten one of these obnoxious toll messages saying that you owe money as part of a toll, that type of a thing. And so watching out and being really careful about our text messages right now, because we know a lot of the phishing attempts are coming via text, I think is really important. Home repair and improvement scams. Again, I mentioned a couple of the calls that came into ElderWatch already today have been about issues with contractors. And I think one of the most important things that we're thinking about with relationship to doing a project at home is, again, knowing that we need to do our research beforehand, whether that be getting multiple bids, getting referrals from friends and neighbors, checking review sites for different types of folks, having a contract, maybe having a lawyer look over a contract again too, if it's a big project. Again, just thinking about some of those things. We do get a lot of calls about this, and my goal here is to make it so no one has to make that call to us, and they're doing their research kind of in advance, so they're ending up with the project that they had hoped at the end. Number 6 on this list is the non-stranger exploitation. And non-stranger exploitation, again, a lot of the times when folks call our helpline, we're referring them directly to Adult Protective Services because they have been at some point potentially someone who knows them was exploited them financially and is taking their money in some way, shape, or form too. A lot of times this is family or caregivers, neighbors, friends, again, taking advantage of these situations. But the most important thing, I think people need to know about this is, it's important to keep a strong network around you so you can acknowledge if something like this is going on. But it's also really important to know that, there's an agency in every county in Colorado called Adult Protective Services. And if you have an issue where someone is exploiting you financially, you can contact Adult Protective Services, and they work directly with law enforcement to take those reports. And so it's important to know about that resource if something is going on in your life that, again, involves exploitation, especially financially, because that seems to be the reports that we get the most. Number 7 on this list, the online dating and romance scams. Again, I'm sure some of you have seen this type of a scam or heard of this type of a scam before, but it's important to know you don't have to be on Match.com or another dating site to end up in one of these types of scams. Most of the time, these scams are starting that we hear about on our helpline on Facebook or on Instagram or other kind of social media sites where people can connect. Yes, they still do occur on dating sites, but at the same time, I think they're trying to look for people who are, maybe not suspecting that they're going to be contacted by someone else. So again, a request for money or goods from someone who you met online is a bright red flag of a romance scam. And these things are going on left and right. Sometimes they pose as celebrities too, which is also very important to know. Number 8, sweepstakes, prize, and lottery scams. Again, one of the most common scams that we hear about on the helpline that has been kind of constant. If you receive a phone call from Publishers Clearinghouse and they are going to bring you $2.5 million in a new Mercedes-Benz, yes, it's too good to be true. And I know everyone on this call today knows that. But the reality is these scammers are good at what they do. They're good at convincing folks that they might have won money And they're really out there to prey on the hopes and dreams of people out there who want to believe they won that big chunk of money. And I wish we won all that money, but reality is just not there. So watch out, especially using that Publishers Clearinghouse name. They still use that name, but also, foreign lottery names, other things like that as well. Really common too. Imposter government scams are trending right now. And so in different forms, we're familiar with imposter government scams from years past, where they've posed as the IRS and they say you owe back taxes, or they pose as Social Security and they say there's something wrong with your Social Security. I think they're taking advantage of unknowns kind of in our world right now. And so it's important to watch out about, for those unsolicited phone calls from someone posing to be with a government agency, whether it be state, local, federal. I would say one of the ones that we hear about more right now that is probably a little bit more convincing than some of the federal ones are people calling and saying that you missed jury duty and you owe money, and you're going to have to pay a fine. So if you receive a threatening phone call, again, from someone saying you missed jury duty, and on your phone it might even say it's coming from the sheriff's department of your county, it's important to know that they don't operate that way. Those are scams that we're hearing about on the helpline as well. So be careful of those jury duty scam calls that are out there. And the last one on this list, fraudulent sales. Again, a lot of the times when we're hearing about fraudulent sales calls on the helpline, it involves online sales. And so I'm thinking about puppy scams. I'm thinking about different scams for health products, where again they say that they're going to give you these pills or this cream and it's going to make you look 20 years younger. Sure, I wish that for all of us, but the reality is, a lot of the times there's a scam with relation to some of these sales that are too good to be true. Also, really important to be careful purchases that you make on Facebook Marketplace and other type of marketplace sites. Again, making sure that you're doing those transactions in person, or in a way that feels comfortable to you. So those are just some of the most common scams we're hearing about on the helpline. And so keep that in mind as we're talking about 10 ways of avoiding fraud today, about what's actually out there and what actually is trending in terms of people attempting to take advantage of older Coloradans. So as we're thinking today too, I challenge you all to think about your scam. And so I think there's a scam for everybody. And you might say, Mark, none of these scams are going to get me. That's perfectly fine, and I hope that none of them get you. But at the same time, I think there's a scam for everybody in different situations. And you have to think about your vulnerabilities. You have to think about what you like. You have to think about what you care about, because scammers, again, are looking for those vulnerabilities. And I think it's, again, important to think about that. And I give my example at a lot of the presentations that I do. A vulnerability that I have is that I like going to sporting events, I like going to concerts, but I also like a deal. And so I'm sure that resonates with some people on this call. Who doesn't like a deal, right? And so the thing is that there are lots of fake ticket scams out there too. And so we get calls on the helpline all the time about issues people have, dealt with trying to get legitimate tickets to a big event. And so again, thinking about that and knowing that again, someone could target me because they know that I want a really good deal on my tickets. And so it's important to think about that. Another, I think, really good example that resonates with a lot of people is the grandparent scam. I haven't talked about the grandparent scam today because we don't get that many calls about it. But at the same time, when I do presentations, I think a lot of people who have received a grandparent scam phone call, again, saying that their grandson or granddaughter, maybe niece or nephew, sometimes a spouse, was involved in a some type of accident or something, and they're in trouble and they owe money, and you want to help them because your vulnerability is you care about your family. And so I think a lot of people have that vulnerability because they care about their family and they want to help in any way possible. And so again, thinking about your vulnerabilities, I think, is really important. Thinking also about circumstantial vulnerabilities, such as, and we hear about this on the helpline all the time too. Someone who just got out of the hospital, someone who recently lost a spouse, someone who's on different medication than they used to be, someone who's expecting a phone call from the doctor or pharmacist, that type of a thing. I think it's really important to think about those situations because maybe you never answer your phone, but you're expecting a phone call. And so all of a sudden you're on the phone with someone who you shouldn't be because you're expecting a phone call from someone who, like your doctor. And so again, thinking about those circumstantial things that might make you vulnerable to a scam as well. Again, knowing that you never answer the phone because you don't get any phone calls from no one calls you, they just text you, that type of a thing. I think it is important to think about as well. In those situations, again, a lot of the times when people call us on the helpline, they will give me an excuse as to why they were victimized by that scam. And that excuse sometimes is, well, I never answer my phone, but I was again expecting a phone call from my friend today, and all of a sudden I started talking to this person that I probably shouldn't have talked to, and I gave them my social security number, or I gave them the last 4 digits of my social security number, that type of thing. So thinking about those types of things too, I think is really important, just in how we kind of approach scams. Again, understanding we all have vulnerabilities to different types of things. And we have to acknowledge that. And as life changes, those vulnerabilities might change too. So think about that. So here is my disclosure for today. It's not the kind of normal disclosure that you'd get. And just a couple of things before we really jump into today's presentation. Yes, we will be sharing the slides. We'll send them out to you via email. I know that there are people who will ask about that. And so, yes, we will be sharing out the slides. Really important. Also, Cheryl on the call, who did my introduction, is going to be kind of fielding questions too, and letting me know when there are questions that come in. Otherwise, we'll just answer them all at the end. But please do type your questions in the chat so we can take care of those questions as we go here, and I'll try to answer as many as possible. Either during or at the end of the presentation. But again, my presentation today is really not intended to make you paranoid, but it's intended to make you think about things. And just knowing that there's lots of people out there who are after our money. And they can come in many different forms, but I think being proactive in how we think about fraud is critically important, and that's really what we're talking about today. So number one, and I think this is really important, and again, I mentioned this already, but we are getting so many calls on our state and national helpline about identity theft. And so being proactive about the way we think about identity and protecting our identity is critically important. And why? If we're in a room and I asked everyone in this presentation, how many of you have received a notification about a data breach in the last year? I think most people would raise their hand, because unless I'm just the really unlucky one, I've received at least 4 in the last year. And so the most recent one was about a rental car company who said that my information was potentially part of a data breach. And so I think it's important that we're thinking about identity theft in the way that, again, our information is probably out there in some way, shape, or form, whether it be as part of a data breach or information that's on the web in a different way, or whatever it may be. Again, just thinking though, and reminding ourselves that our information probably is out there somewhere, and we should be proactive instead of waiting for someone to let us know that there's something wrong with our identity, or we start receiving weird mail saying that we didn't get a loan or whatever it may be. So when I say that, I'm talking about doing things like checking your annual credit report, and the information for how to do that is on the screen right there, and it's free. And you can do it once a week if you want to. And that's how you contact the 3 credit reporting bureaus. And I'm talking about the 3 credit reporting bureaus. It's Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And so by either calling that phone number or going on that website, they will connect you with a way of how to pull your annual credit report for free. And so that's one really easy step. And when you pull your annual credit report, what you're trying to do there is essentially make sure that everything falls in line with any lines of credit you have, or any loans you've taken out, mortgages that you have out, any of those things like that. Anything that doesn't look familiar is something that you might need to ask about. And so again, doing that, and again, when we look at our credit report, it has so much information in it. It's far more than a credit score, because again, a credit score is just kind of a number based on the algorithm, based upon your payment history, the different credit that you've had in the past, that type of thing. Your annual credit report will actually show you every time you paid your credit card bill, or every time if your mortgage is in good standing, if any loans you've had are in good standing, that type of a thing too. And so again, a really important step to take. When we've done research in the past, We found out usually about 40% of people have checked their annual credit report in the last year. I think some people are lying. That number is high. And so I know some of you, I know if I asked, about a third of you maybe have that's on this call. But if you haven't done that in the last year, it's a really easy step to take, again, just to make sure that your identity is in good standing with those credit reporting bureaus. Another really important and easy thing that we can do is place a fraud alert or a credit freeze. Again, credit freezes, it seems like when we've done research in the past, we found out about maybe a third of Coloradans have placed a credit freeze. But a credit freeze is a really easy step that folks can take to have a peace of mind about your credit. And you have to contact each of the 3 credit reporting bureaus, again, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, and place a freeze directly with them. The easiest way to do it, I would say, is probably going to each of their websites and setting up an account with each of them. And again, the freeze is free. You don't have to buy any products from them. But again, it makes it so you or anyone else can't open a new line of credit in your name unless you unfreeze it. And so I'm not giving, you can see on these slides, I don't have all the information for all the credit reporting bureaus, but what I do have is that website, identitytheft.gov. And I will tell you that on our helpline, probably state and nationally, that is probably the #1 website that we're giving out, just in terms of identity theft protection steps. And so I think it's, again, really important. And once you go on that website, it will have all the information for the 3 credit reporting bureaus, plus the information for checking annual credit report. And so, again, if you want to place a credit freeze or you want to place a fraud alert, those types of things, it'll walk you through how to do it there and where to go exactly, including the links and that type of a thing. So again, I highly recommend that folks take some type of identity theft precaution. And again, one of the easiest ways to get started is just by going to the website identitytheft.gov and going from there. On that website too, there's lots of proactive steps for how to protect your identity, but also if you have been the victim of identity theft, there are reactive ways as well. You can file a report on identitytheft.gov, and it's created by the Federal Trade Commission. So again, one of the federal agencies that we work with to report fraud. So again, taking proactive steps to protect your identity, I think critically important. Your personal information is valuable, and criminals know that, and they're going to try and use it in different ways. And so again, take a proactive step, and this is one of the easiest things you can do to protect your identity. #2, managing your devices. And so when I'm talking about your devices, I'm talking about your technology, your phone. I'm talking about your computer. I'm talking about your tablet. Anything that has a browser on it, I think, is really important. Again, these scams, we're used to scams, I think, taking place on our home computer, whether it be a desktop or a laptop, and we're a little bit less used to them taking over our phone or being on our phone. And so I think we have to remember, though, that our phones are just a really small computer. And so any scam that you get on your home computer could also be a scam that you get on your phone. And criminals are targeting phones, I think, more just because there might be more information on that phone. We might have a direct access to our bank account on our phone that's very easy for them to see if they are able to take over our device in some way. So I think it's really important. We're managing our devices in a very proactive way. We're remembering, that all these devices are places where criminals are looking to get access to. And so really important, if someone asks you for remote access to your device using a program like AnyDesk, or there's a handful of different programs out there that do that, that you're denying that. Sometimes, even if you're not comfortable denying it or knowing how to do it, or you're uncomfortable clicking something, shut off your device, sever that tie with that person who's trying to take over your device. Because a lot of the times what their goal is to get onto your device and then, get as much banking information or financial information as they possibly can. And so allowing remote access, never a good thing unless you've already made that kind of contact and you know that someone out there who's reputable is going to be checking your computer or helping you fix your computer in whatever way that would be. Also, I think it's really important that folks are utilizing safety features. And when I'm saying safety features, I'm talking about just to basically access your device. And so if you don't have some type of a barrier to someone else looking at your phone, do that today. whether it be a simple PIN, a password, a fingerprint, facial recognition, whatever it may be. Again, just acknowledging how much information is on our phone and on our tablet and our other devices that we use. And so again, utilize some type of basic safety feature. So again, if you lose your device or if someone steals your device, that they can't just access it and then get onto whatever information you have there really easily. And so again, really important to have some type of barrier in place for when you are, trying to use your device. Again, strong passwords are still required for a lot of the devices that we have, but using those biometric tools, I think, is a really important thing to do. Again, the fingerprint, the facial recognition, whatever it may be, I think is a good way, but also strong passwords, I think, are really important, especially for those accounts that manage your finances, manage your retirement funds, manage your 401k or whatever it may be. That's really important. It's also really important to update your device. And so a lot of the times the updates to your device, whether it be your phone or your computer or your Windows update, people may not shut off their device for a while. And sometimes the shutdown of your device or the restart of your device will trigger some type of update to the system. And a lot of those times the updates are getting rid of or helping to update their systems and acknowledge that there are other types of people trying to infiltrate the systems too. And so thinking about updates and being proactive about updates, not letting them just expire or pass by, I think is really important because a lot of the times they have security features that help keep your device safe and helps from pop-ups coming up and different things like that where people are trying to get a hold, again, of your personal or financial information. And ask for help if you don't know. And so, there are different resources out there. A lot of the times I find some of the best resources are community libraries. They have folks who will sit down and help you navigate your device. Also, there are lots of different programs out there. Senior Planet's one of them that helps folks with their devices as well. So think about that if you're not sure about how to do it. And again, staying safe. Sometimes just going to your phone store, talking to someone who can help you navigate a situation that you're dealing with is something that you have to do too. And there's usually lots of helpful people around. So don't be scared to ask for help in terms of kind of managing your devices, because again, these devices that we have are expensive. We all know our phones are expensive, our computers are expensive. We don't want to end up, with malware or anyone, somehow getting onto those devices and maybe exploiting any personal or financial information that's on there. So that's number 2.
Hey, Mark, quick
Yeah,
question came in. I don't know if you can answer this. It says,
yeah,
how and or where can you get a VPN?
yeah. So VPN and folks, the VPNs. A lot of people, I get this is a common question that we get. The virtual private network, or people ask, do I need a VPN? That type of a thing. And essentially, a VPN is a really helpful tool that if you are on that if you're on Wi-Fi somewhere, public Wi-Fi somewhere, where you can kind of make your own network as part of that Wi-Fi. You're still accessing that public Wi-Fi that might be at the restaurant or coffee shop or airport or wherever, or library. But then the VPN then puts you kind of in your own room within that network. And so it's a tool that I think that if people are maybe traveling a lot, or not at home, not on a home network, and easily able to do that, are it's then a good thing to do. I also say a lot of the times, like, I don't think a VPN is necessary for folks who are using public Wi-Fi to do things like read the news, check their email with their friends and family, basic kind of things like that. But anything that involves, personal or financial information, whether it be banking or shopping or doing your taxes or those types of things, shouldn't be done on a private, on a public Wi-Fi network. And so if you don't have that kind of private access to a private network, a VPN might be an option for you. You can get them online. I honestly can't give a recommendation of a VPN that I would like a private recommendation but I would say, again, it's something that whoever asked that question, if you want to follow up with me, I'm happy to talk offline about it. But I don't have like a specific recommendation for which one to use or that type of a thing too. But they're available in different ways. Yeah. So good question though. We get a lot of people ask about VPNs. I think for a lot of the people who I talk to who kind of it's not necessarily a thing. I think if you're a Fortune 500 CEO, and you probably need the VPN for everything. And AARP requires us to use a VPN anytime we're using kind of our network information as well, just again to keep it safe. And a lot of big organizations are the same way. But again, it just depends what your utilization is. And so I think, again, especially for a lot of older adults, if you're traveling a lot, if you're going to be out of town or out of the country for months on end, and you still have to pay bills and do that type of thing, that might be one of the best examples of when I think a VPN might be a good tool, again, to use to stay safe. Again, please keep entering questions, and I'll try to answer them. Cheryl will get them to me as quickly as they come in, or answer them all at the end. Again, avoiding unsolicited contacts. This is number 3. Again, criminals are lurking everywhere, and I think it's important that folks ask themselves, what does that person want from me? And if the answer to that question is information or money, then it's probably a good time to disengage, regardless of where that communication is coming from. Again, important to watch out for phone calls. Scammers are still trying to call us. And even though it says scam likely on our phone, when a lot of those calls come in, it's not perfect technology. And there's still plenty of opportunities where those calls that are coming in are scammers, and they're getting through. And so again, understanding caller ID and spoofing, scammers can use a download or an app or a very simple computer program to make it look like your caller ID, whatever they want to look up. And so again, they can say it's the Larimer County Sheriff's Department within your caller ID. So it's an extra convincing way of trying to contact you, or whatever it may be. And so again, watch out for that. I highly recommend using blocking and scam warning technologies. Again, a lot of the times with your phone or with your phone provider, they will have some type of blocking or warning technology to let you know that. One of the common names in this blocking technology is Nomo Robo, and it's just NOMOROBO. And if you go on their website, you can see that it's a technology that again takes out some of those phone calls. But it almost, and for some people, we might rely on robocalls for some reasons, because our doctor's appointment or a hair appointment, or they might utilize like a robocall technology, and so to remind you of your appointment that's coming up. And so it will also get rid of those legitimate robocalls as well. So again, important to consider all the different factors when you are shopping for different types of call warning and call blocking systems. Again, text messages, one of the most common ways that scammers are trying to contact us right now. Don't click on links, don't download anything, and don't respond. A lot of the times what they're trying to get us to do is click on a link to take us to like a nefarious website. In addition to that, they're sometimes trying to get us to call a number. And so, or in some way get our credit card number or bank account number, that type of a thing. And sometimes those text messages that we're receiving are just saying, hey, how's it going? And you're wondering, well, what the heck is this? And who the heck is this? But a lot of the times, again, that's a scammer who's trying to build a rapport with with the person who they're talking to. And so we'll get these random messages that just say, hey, how's it going? Or, hey, you're late for dinner, what's going on? Or, some type of kind of personal thing. And then they're trying to build up a conversation with you so that at some point they can ask you for money. And so those are coming in probably more than they ever have before. Again, managing your emails, our emails, make sure you mark those emails as spam or junk. And if there's phishing email, again, so they go in your spam folder and they go in your junk folder if they're going in your normal inbox anyways. Again, social media is one of the top places that scammers are looking for their victims. There are millions of fake profiles, out there on social media platforms. So if someone contacts you and you're not sure who it is and you've never met them in person, it's a really important time to probably not respond. Even though they might have, a really hot picture or whatever it may be. Again, really important, and they might be very flattering too. They might say, "Oh, you're amazing, you're beautiful," all these types of things. They use tactics like that to try and get these conversations going. And so, again, really important to not engage with strangers on social media and at your door too. I think it's, I'm not the best at saying no at my door, and so having a refusal script ready for when you do answer that door. For different types of things, I think is really important. If you're not comfortable saying no at your door, I think it's important that you can say, I don't do business at my door. You can leave me with information and I'll contact you if if I want to learn more about your product or whatever it may be. And so having that script ready so you're not hemming and hawing at the person at your door, I think is important, or getting roped into something you don't feel like you want to get roped into, I think is really important too. Also avoiding, so one of the top red flags of scams is, I would say, is again how that scammer is requesting funds. And so, what they're going to often do is request unusual forms of payment, and that if that payment method they're asking for should be a bright red flag of a scam. And so right now, cryptocurrency is a really common way that scammers are requesting funds because they know that it's fast, easy, and difficult to trace. And so again, if someone tells you to go to a cryptocurrency ATM machine or a Bitcoin ATM machine, or a fund kiosk, I mean, they might have a different name for it even. Um, that is a bright red flag of a scam. Legitimate businesses and government entities aren't requesting payments via cryptocurrency at this time. And so don't expect any legitimate type of entity, to be asking for you to pay via cryptocurrency. In that same breath, again, if someone contacts you online and tells you that they can quadruple your money through a crypto investment, that is also 100% a scam as well, and something to be avoided. But that word crypto in this space, if you're not familiar with what's going on and you haven't done your research about crypto, it's a bright red flag of a scam, no matter what type of kind of conversation you're having with someone about that situation. Crypto is a place where people can invest, into market-based funds. And so, if you're not paying someone, you shouldn't be paying anyone with crypto as a form of payment. And if you get that requested, it's time to disengage. That peer-to-peer payment apps, again, I use Venmo all the time to pay friends. I mean, maybe the person who cuts my hair, whatever it may be. And so that's what those types of apps are used for. The Venmo, the Cash App, the Zelle, they're meant for doing peer-to-peer payments with folks, with people who you know. They are not for making payments with someone who you don't know. And so, for example, if you're on Facebook Marketplace and you want to buy a product from someone in your neighborhood, and they say, well, I can't meet up right now, I'll just send it to you and you Venmo me. And there's probably a good chance you're not going to receive that product, again, unless you know that person. And so again, being really cautious about how we use these apps. We're seeing that younger adults, because they're very used to using these types of apps, might be more likely to be victimized by a scam, again, just because the familiarity with it. And so they're more used to just assuming everything's going to work out. And so again, if they buy from someone on Facebook or eBay or Craigslist or whatever it may be, and expect to receive whatever their product is, and because they sent a payment, it might not happen. And so important to know that these are not banks. A lot of people think that they're a bank and they might be FDIC insured. They are not. They are just a conduit to transfer money between two bank accounts. And so again, important to know that if you send money via one of these platforms, your money is probably gone. And so you want to make sure that it went to the right person. Gift cards, again, are still being asked for by scammers left and right. And so again, the IRS does not take Home Depot gift cards. I can promise you that. If someone tells you to buy a Green Dot gift card and you don't know what a Green Dot gift card is, it's probably a scam. Again, they're using different names for gift cards in some instances, but you shouldn't be buying gift cards to make payments or sending a picture of that gift card so someone can liquidate it. Just again, because there's a lot of scams involving that. Wire transfers, again, same type of a thing. Be really, really cautious if someone requests a wire transfer. I think a lot of folks are used to the MoneyGrams and the Western Unions of the world. We don't see as many scams involving those kind of wire transfer services anymore, but at the same time, they might be asking you to transfer from your bank as well. And then bank account access, we see that probably the most with tech support and computer virus scams. And so again, if someone tries to get into your device and their goal is to get into your bank account and just drain it. And so, not giving out your login and password or any type of access to your bank account is critically important, regardless of who that person says they are.
Hey, Mark, just a couple quick things. I
Yeah.
missed a question earlier. You'd mentioned that we could get a call, you call a credit company and get a report weekly. but most of us are under the understanding you can request a free credit report once a year. So is that a weekly is a true statement?
Weekly is a true statement. That's changed.
Okay.
In any of the credit reporting bureaus, if you request it online, it can be done on a weekly basis. And that was something that started during COVID. And so
Okay.
again, I think important to know that it's not the same. A lot of people used to be very used to pulling a credit report every 3 months or every 4 months from one of the credit reporting bureaus and kind of spacing that out over time. Now it's not the case. And so there's a lot less restrictions, and they're a lot more open to people kind of checking their credit report on a weekly basis if you're doing it online.
Okay. Another question is there any risk to merely reading a scammer's text or email message, but not clicking on a link? They've opened a message before when they didn't recognize the sender email and then realized as they were looking at the information that it wasn't legitimate. So did they put themselves at risk?
Yeah, generally speaking, and I think a lot of people fear this with regards to emails and text messages and those types of things too. I mean, you have to be able to view the text or the email to know if what the request is anyways. And so, as long as you're not downloading something from that email or that text message or clicking on a link or calling a number associated with it, you're probably okay. In some situations, they might be checking analytics to see if someone opened that or not, to see if it's a live account. But generally speaking, if you're not doing any of the, if you're not clicking on anything or downloading anything or those types of things, you're probably just fine. I just got a phishing attempt this morning from work, and I had to open it to see what it was. And so that did not put me in danger, but it made me realize right away when I saw the text within it that it was a scam, and I could mark it as phishing. And so again, I think people get concerned about that, but you sometimes have to open it again just to fully understand what the message is. As long as you don't take an action after that, you should be fine. But again, the only risk in my view probably is them maybe checking the analytics about who opened it just to see if it's a live account or live number.
Okay, oh my goodness. Okay, one last one and then I'll hold the
Yeah.
rest of them. Is PayPal more secure than Venmo or does it matter?
So they're the same company, and so I'm sure some of you know that, but Venmo is owned by PayPal, and so they use a lot of the same precautions. Again, I think the peer-to-peer payment apps are safe if you're dealing with a friend or someone who you know. And so if you're splitting dinner or splitting a ride, or you're paying someone for concert tickets that they purchased, or you're sending your grandson $100 for his birthday or whatever, like those are all safe reasons to be using Venmo or Cash App or Zelle. PayPal a lot of the times is attached to a bank account number or a credit card number, and so when I use PayPal, it's sometimes based on the fact that the retailer that I'm shopping with wants their payment via PayPal. And so because it's tied to a credit, but my PayPal account's tied to a credit card account, again, there's protections with a credit card more so than like a bank account too. And so I would say, again, depending on who the money's going towards, it's probably, the they're both relatively safe entities as long as you know what you're doing and who you're paying. It is my real answer for that, and they're the same company as well. So a lot of the same recourse with both of them. Cool. I'll keep going and continue to answer questions as we go here, and be respectful of everyone's time. Again, I mentioned before doing your research when we're talking about home repair and improvements, but I think it's really important. I don't want you to have to call our helpline after you've had a bad problem with a car purchase or someone who's fixing something at your house. And so doing your research, I think, is really important about almost anything that you're doing, especially if you're buying something from a new retailer that you've never shopped with before. Again, I think that's really important too. So again, saving you time and money, doing your research is important. I know that sometimes we just want to get a project done and we're like, okay, I'm just going to go with this, but acknowledging you might have a problem as a result of that. So, things that you can do with regards to your research, I think, again, an easy thing to do is using search tools like Google to Google yourself, find out what information is out there about you so you understand what people might know when they call you or contact you. Also, just using the trick, if you're shopping with a new business, put the name of the company or their URL and the word fraud, scam, complaint next to that, and see if anyone else has complained about that business or entity that you might be doing business with. I think is really important. I also think it's really important to check review sites. So again, if you're going to a car shop to get your car fixed, or you're going to a new restaurant, or whatever it may be, checking the different types of review sites to understand what other people's experiences were, will give you a good idea of if that's a business that you should be doing business with. And again, knowing that there are sometimes biases in reviews too, and knowing that some places you have to pay to be on a review site, and so understanding again how these different types of review sites work, like the Better Business Bureau and Angie's List. The largest review site in the world is Google, and so if again we think about that when we're going to looking for a place to eat, that type of a thing, or going to a new store, seeing what other people's experiences were will help inform us about what we should be expecting. And I think using those tools is really important. Again, understanding the bias reviews and also getting referrals from friends and neighbors, multiple bids on different projects, I think is really important too. Again, if you have a big project that you're going to do and it's going to cost a lot of money, it's a good idea to talk to 3 or 4 people to see, again, what their take on that is, and how much they're going to charge. So you can, again, get those ideas out there. And again, it might take a little bit longer at the end of the day, but at the same time, your project is probably going to be more successful than if you didn't do that research in advance.
Can I give you a few more questions?
Yeah,
Okay. First of all, one person made a comment, and I'm just going to repeat it because um, I think we've all seen it. Lot of emails from Geek Squad right now,
yeah,
telling you about deducting money for, a bill. So lots of those. I've seen a bunch of them.
yeah.
But the questions are, how do you stop excessive spams on your cell phone, like 30 or 40 per day? That's a lot.
Yeah, I'm guessing the spam is coming in via text message. There are different types, and I will say I have a work phone and a personal phone. My personal phone gets rid of almost every spam message that's coming in via text message, and my work phone gets rid of none of them. And so they vary greatly based upon the different type of phone you have, the different service providers in some situations too. And so next time you get a new device, it might be worth asking, but also see if there are any apps out there that can help control that too. And so I would recommend doing research in terms of talking to your phone provider, seeing if there's any tools that they have, seeing if there's any settings within your phone to help block some of the messages that are coming in as well, I think is important. And again, just acknowledging that you don't need to be responding. If you respond to any of those, it sometimes will generate more. And so being really cautious about how you respond to those and how you deal with them. A lot of the time scammers are changing their number over and over and over again. And so, blocking isn't always the most effective method unless you're getting the same call or the same text from the same number over and over and over again. And so, again, just being really cognizant of that, especially if you have a limited blocks on your phone. I know some people have that as part of their service. They can only block a certain amount of people a month, that type of a thing.
Is there an agency to check? It says I can check with to verify the quote, you are entitled to free government funds ads that seem to flood my feeds.
Yeah, I mean, just assume that all of those are some type of misleading offer. As you know, especially with kind of the world in which we live right now, too. People aren't throwing out extra funds for any good reason, but a lot of the times, again, the advertisers, shady advertisers or legitimate advertisers, are using analytics as part of from your search tools to help generate ads for you in very specific ways. And that's why, for instance, if I'm shopping for a specific jacket and then I go on CNN.com to look at something on the website, there might be an ad for that jacket on the sidebar of CNN. So they're using those analytical tools to do that. And so if you've ever searched, in the last year for like a loan or that type of a thing, those are the type of things that might be generated and so it's extra important that if you are trying to engage with any of those advertisements that you see, that you do extra research, because a lot of them are shady or misleading in a lot of ways.
What are your thoughts about using a password manager like LastPass? You can store and use very strong passwords with a manager, but is there a risk from using it to store passwords?
Yeah, I think it's password managers are great. And I don't personally use one, but I think a lot of people do use them. And if you are frustrated managing all of the passwords that you have, and you're not comfortable having that list next to your computer, like we're not supposed to have, I think it's again important that you at least do your research about those tools and figure out what they offer and how they manage it, because they work in different ways. But no, I think, again, if you are kind of feeling swamped by managing your passwords and you're really trying to keep your account safe, that's a really smart way to go. Is to use a password manager. But just know, again, it's like if you're in getting a LifeLock type of product, or a different type of product to help protect your identity. There's a lot of different offerings out there and a lot of different costs involved. And so do your research, figure out what they offer, and but also know too, I mean, nothing is perfect in this world, just in terms of our protecting our information. And so, keeping it in as few places as possible, I think is best practice overall.
Okay, one more quick one. I'll let you go on. Can you please explain the scam fraud complaint search trick again?
Yeah, and so I use this all the time, especially for a business that I'm not familiar with. And so if I'm looking to buy something from them, what I would do is just go in the search bar, or go in the query bar on your browser, and put the name of that business or the URL of that business, and then next to it, put the word fraud or scam or complaint, and just and search it and see if anyone has complained about it in the past. There are a bunch of different websites that kind of like track scams, and so they will it will have, different entities will have reported the problem they had with that business, and so you can read about it. The same type of thing, if you go on the BBB website and you look up a specific business, you can then go and see what complaints were and read every complaint that was there. And so having that ability will help you, again, determine if that was a scam. Like one example that we had a lot was like puppy scams. And so if you were able to Google the name of that puppy, of that breeder, or whatever that might be, and then found out that three other people had just, had tried to get a puppy from that breeder, but then they never received it. That's like a really quick way to know that that is not a legitimate business that you should be working with. And so that's just one of the ways that I would suggest folks, do a little bit of really easy research. Cool. I'm going to keep going. I'll probably, just based on questions, I'll probably go over by a couple of minutes, but people can jump whenever. I will continue giving this information as long as people are around and have questions. So again, number 6 here: actively manage your risk. It's important to know when you're taking a risk and how, to mitigate damages. And so again, being extra vigilant for red flags. Telling you to stop if you take a risk. And so if you don't do your research, again, expect to have to, keep more checks and balances on the system moving forward, using public Wi-Fi, that type of a thing. An example that I hear about all the time, people always say, like, I'm on a trip. Is it okay for me to book my next hotel on this trip, because I haven't booked it yet? But I'm using the Wi-Fi, a public Wi-Fi source. And again, it's just important when you're thinking about doing things like that, that you're managing your risk. So next time I am using secure connection or using my data on my phone or whatever it may be, maybe I will double check my bank account to make sure nothing happened, or try and just, again, take those extra steps when we know we're using risky behaviors. If we don't do our research on a product that we're going to buy. I've done this before. I've been the victim of a scam on buying something crappy on Instagram that I shouldn't have bought because I thought it was a really good deal. But I knew too that I'm using my credit card, so I have recourse and I can dispute it if I didn't receive the product. And so I know that I have 60 days to dispute it. So I go on my calendar, I I put at day 55 if I didn't receive the product and I need to dispute the charge on my credit card. And so thinking about things with regards to managing risk like that, I think is really important. And using your credit card in those instances so you have recourse, rather than the money coming directly out of your account when you're like using a debit card or a direct deposit type of a thing, is an important way of thinking about it too. Developing a refusal script, again, is really important. I used that example earlier about developing a refusal script to your door because I'm not good at saying no at my door, but having that refusal script in place, I think, is really, really important. And so you're able to say no in situations where you're not normally able to say no. And again, it, refusal scripts can be used for a lot of different things. And I think, again, I'm not doing business at my door. I always consult with my partner before making a financial decision. Those are ones that people are comfortable with. And so again, you can move on with your day without feeling bad about that interaction if you have that refusal script in place. So again, I think it's really important whether you're bad at saying no at your door, on the phone, or online, or in business situations. I often use the Girl Scout cookie example. When you go to King Soopers and there's Girl Scout cookie season and you already bought 10 boxes, but we want to politely say no to the sweet little Girl Scouts that are at the front of King Soopers. It's thinking about how you're going to do that, I think, is important so you don't feel or look like a jerk. Acknowledging changes in our lives and how that can affect scams. I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but changes happen, and that's often when the scammers will try to take advantage of you. So again, thinking about if death in the family, thinking about changes in health and medication, thinking about seasonal scams, again around the holidays. Those text messages were not about tolls, they were about undeliverable packages, right? So we received all those text messages during the holidays about undeliverable packages. They switched the script now, but we're thinking about, again, we're more likely to be receiving packages around the holidays, and so think that those scams might be coming. Also, if you've been victimized before by a scam, sometimes those scammers will keep a list and they're going to circle back to you, and so it's important to be watching out for those types of things as well, because again, they're trying to take advantage of us in different ways, circumstantially and other. I think this is a really important one. It's probably one of the most basic slides that I have on this presentation, but I think trusting your gut is critically important too. I think a lot of older adults who call our helplines are saying, are shooting themselves down because a lot of times they don't necessarily trust their gut. It's that you have a lifetime experience to rely on, and if something doesn't feel right, that's probably a really good indicator that you should, not be engaging in whatever you're doing. And so again, taking time to think. Scammers will often give you a timeline at which you should be working on, and if they're giving you a timeline you're not comfortable with, it's probably a scam. Again, if the offer seems too good to be true and you just know that it probably is, disengage if something doesn't feel right, even if it is something that's on the up and up. At the same time, if it doesn't feel right or if something rubs you the wrong way, that's a really good time to disengage. And so I think it's really important that people, remember that they do have that lifetime experience to rely on in terms of these different type of shady situations they're dealing with. And this last number 10 here, listen, share, report, don't judge. It's important that we're not operating in silence, because a lot of the times people are ashamed of talking about a situation they dealt with because they don't think they, did it in the right way. But at the same time, they probably don't know that the person they're talking to might have also had that exact same situation. So you're not alone in these situations. It's important to listen and understand and help others in these situations, because we're all dealing with it. We're all getting these text messages. We're all getting these scams. And so, we have to have a community approach to it and help other people know that we're experiencing it too. And we've all made mistakes. And so we're not judging people who made a mistake based upon some type of scam situation. Share your experience. It might save the person next to you, your friend or neighbor. Report, make sure the authorities know so they can put out reports in the media and that type of a thing too. Don't judge. And I think this is critically important. Remember who the bad guy is in the situation. Just because we were victimized doesn't mean that you should be blamed for what happened. And so the bad guy is the one out there stealing money. We're not the one stealing money. And so, victimization is already difficult enough. And there's no reason to shame people who've, been through a difficult situation like this. It's a crime. It's a financial crime. And we have to remember that it is that way and treat victims like we would the victimization of any other type of criminal act. So here's our
Couple
phone
quick
number.
questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Have you ever heard of card nav to keep your credit cards there for need to lock quicker if compromised?
I haven't heard of that one specifically. There's so many tools out there that help us kind of manage things in different ways. And so, I think investigating what works for you and taking advantage of those types of things is really important. I don't know of that one specifically, but again, thinking about all the different products that our banks and other financial institutions provide, we're probably not taking advantage of all of them. And so if you're trying to keep your money safe for different reasons, for instance, if every transaction that you have on your credit card, you might get an alert on your phone about every transaction that you get, or maybe any transaction over $500 or $1,000 or whatever it may be, whatever you feel like makes sense for you. Learn from your financial institutions what types of products that they have. I don't specifically go over each of the different kind of offerings that are out there because there's just so many different ones. And so, it's important to be proactive about thinking about and talking to your financial institutions about what types of protections they do have and use those. And some of them might be outside sources that can help do that. And that's fine too. Again, just do your research and figure out what other people's experiences have been using those tools.
And one person asked, have you ever heard of the vanilla Visa scam?
Yeah, I mean, and vanilla cards are, vanilla Visa cards. I think sometimes scammers use, and it's a normal gift card that you can essentially load with money, and so scammers might be requesting that specifically when they're asking you about, to pay funds for whatever it may be. And so I think they might just use the term vanilla in those situations. Oh, just get a vanilla card. And so you're thinking, you're not associating it with the fact that it might be a gift card or it might be, associated with Visa, but it sounds like a legitimate form of payment. And so again, watching out for those kind of red flags about payment methods that are requesting that don't seem normal, I think is really important. And just again knowing that it's common, but the scammers use lots of different names of lots of different kind of gift cards that are out there. Do you have other ones?
Nope, that was all I had.
That was it. Yeah. If there's any more questions, I'm happy to take any final questions. I know that folks are probably I think we're just hitting the end. I will say that we AARP ElderWatch is hosting with some our partners. We are hosting some shredding events coming up in the next month or so, and so June 17th is going to be in Greeley, and we're at the Island Grove Regional Park in the parking lot. So if you're in Greeley, that's coming up June 17th. It's a Tuesday, and we're there from 9 to noon. All these events are from 9 to noon that I'm mentioning coming up. June 28th is going to be in Fort Collins, and that's a Saturday. And so if anyone's in Fort Collins or Larimer County, we'll be up there. And the event that we always host in Fort Collins, we usually do it in the fall, but we're doing it in the spring this year, or I guess the summer this year. But it's at the same location, that Canvas Credit Union on 2503 Research Boulevard. So again, if you're in Fort Collins, that's the shredding event that's happening there. And then July 19th, we'll have a shredding event in Colorado Springs, Black Forest Lutheran Church, again, 9 to noon on Saturday, July 19th. That will be going on as well. So just know those shredding events are going on. You can bring up to 3 boxes of shreddable materials, documents that you want to get rid of to those locations. We will have more shredding events being announced in the coming month as well, but those are the 3 that are on our calendar that are coming up right now. So if we don't have any more questions, anything else, Cheryl?
There's nothing in the chat. Does anybody have any more questions? Hold on, something just came. Oh, just got a bunch of thank yous. That's good.
Well, again, thanks you so much for everyone for being on. I'm going to go ahead and put our ElderWatch email in here. If you have any questions about the shredding events or whatever it may be, you can shoot us an email. And again, happy to ask questions. If you have affinity groups of different sorts where you're looking for presentations in your community, we can try and help you out with that too. And so just let us know. Again, happy to help out with different types of information about fraud, scams, and the other. So with that though, again, thank you so much.
Mark, there's one quick comment. Does WI have an elder watch?
So Wisconsin, so their AARP does fraud outreach in every state, and so they don't have a specific ElderWatch program, but there is an AARP nationally. The work that's being done is through the AARP's Fraud Watch network, and so there are people who there are volunteers and staff in Wisconsin who are doing this type of work as there are every other state.
Okay. And that's it. Oh, someone said show the last screen, please.
I can do that.
Okay.
Let's see here. Here we go. Last screen again, our phone number, 800-222-4444. That number is specifically the Colorado Attorney General's consumer complaint line, but we are option 2 there. It will also get you to different resources, the CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, their identity theft resource team. It'll also get you to the Better Business Bureaus in Colorado too. And so those are, it's a great phone number to know just for getting to basic resources like that. That identitytheft.gov that I mentioned before, really important resource. The Colorado Attorney General's consumer website for education website is that stopfraudcolorado.gov. Lots of great information there. IC3.gov is the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Again, that's a place where they kind of take all the complaints that are internet based. And so again, these slides, we'll send them out to you as the follow-up email that's coming out to you as well. So you'll have them in that form too.
All right. I think we're good to go. Everybody will get a copy of the recording and the emails.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for everyone who joined today. Thank you to Cheryl for hosting today's event. And again, these slides will be sent out to you either later today or tomorrow. And again, thanks for all your attention and stay safe out there.
All right. Thank you.